Everybody will call the meeting to order. This is what is it? The April 10th meeting of the Dunn County Planning, Resource and Development Committee. Looking around the table, it looks like all committee members are present. So approval of the minutes from March 27th.
I shall move that.
Supervisor Bjork, is there a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Brunner seconds. Barrier seconds. Any discussion or corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any public comments? Okay. Then we have we'll start the day with the public hearing. I'll call the hearing to order. Note that we have again all committee members present. What we'll do is we'll ask for the staff to confirm that the proper notices have been issued and then provide us with a report on the rezone request. The committee will have an opportunity to ask any questions about the report. And then we'll ask if there's any public testimony from the public with regard to the request. If anyone does care to testify, we will ask you to come up to the microphone and we'll do a quick swearing in, and then we'll probably adjourn the hearing after the final discussion, and then consider the request in open committee session. So with that, I'll ask Ann if she can provide us with the confirmation of the publication and the staff report.
Good morning, everybody. So the notice of public hearing was published through the Dunn County News from March 22nd to March 29th. This would have been a Class 2 notice. Tom, would you like me to read the notice?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to skip back up to my staff report then. Okay. So the applicant, Ray Whitkey, has submitted a petition for a zoning map amendment to rezone a parcel located in the town of Sherman from general agriculture to residential 1. And as you can see on your screen, it's the area highlighted in yellow. The purpose of the rezone petition, Mr. Whitkey owns several adjoining parcels totaling about 18 acres in the towns of Sherman and Tainter in this area. He'd eventually like to combine the subject parcel with an outlot that's to the east on Tainter Lake. They have different zoning designations, and Dunn County policy does not allow a parcel to have 2 different zoning designations. For this reason, he's requesting to rezone the subject parcel to R1 so that the zoning can match and they could be combined in the future for a single family residential structure. Some general features of the property. I've got a zoning map here so you can see there's areas of general commercial. There's some R1 bordering and some R2 to the south. The pink boundary line represents the boundary between the towns of Sherman and the town of Tainter. And then this parcel does have some shoreline protection overlay areas, but there's no areas of floodplain and there are no habitable structures on the property at present. So consistency with the comprehensive plan, both the towns and Dunn County. So the town of Tainter's comprehensive plan indicates the outlot and the area nearest to the subject parcel as future rural residential. They would also point out in their goals and objectives that they prefer single family or duplexes in this area. We scroll down, the town of Sherman, at the time that Dunn County adopted their comprehensive ordinance, they did not have a comp plan. Both the town of Sherman and Dunn County are working on updating their comprehensive plans, including their future land use areas. The town of Sherman reviewed the previous request to rezone this property to R1 in 2021 and recommended approval. After speaking with them, they said it was similar. They didn't feel like they needed to comment any further. Scrolling down, trends of development in the area. It's been transitioning from agricultural to residential and commercial. Neighboring properties to the north were rezoned from general agriculture to general commercial very recently in 2022. So currently the property is zoned as general ag. Limited residential development is permitted in this district as, you know, as it's currently zoned. Land is currently open grassland and not used for crop production. The productivity of the land is considered of low importance as indicated on the soil productivity map found in the Dunn County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Rezoning from general ag to R1 would be a net zero loss of ag land for this reason. And then I've listed our findings that we've gone through. We found that the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding zoning districts and does not result in spot zoning. It's consistent with the public interest. Town of Sherman and Town of Tainter both commented on this previously and when it was requested before, and both recommended approval. So based on this analysis and findings, zoning staff recommend approval of the request to rezone the subject parcel from general ag to residential 1. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Does the committee have any questions or comments at this point?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Mayor.
Thank you. If you could go back up to the colored one with the general commercial R1, the zoning on it, please. Yeah. Now, the parcel that's being rezoned is with the smaller chunk is a little over 3 acres, I think.
It's highlighted in red there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, a little over 3 acres. And I looked down at the other R2s, those must all be way smaller than an acre, huh?
Yeah, they're pretty small. They were, you know, shoreline lots sometimes seem to be pretty small. I think, Tom, is there a housing development there?
There's a recorded subdivision plat on that. The name escapes me right now, but they are very small lots.
Okay. Well, now if this is rezoned to R1, they're limited to 1 acre, is that correct? If they wanted to split it up into lots.
Oh, they would have to meet the minimum lot size of 1 acre.
Yeah, okay, I was just curious. It looks funny. Thank you. I was just curious about the surrounding things.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Matt,
Supervisor.
I just want to compliment Ann on this staff report. It's really well done and easy to follow, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have untied a knotty problem. It's like, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, anyone from the public that would like to address the request? Sure. Should go up and name an address and then I'll swear you in.
Yep, Ron Jasperson, W5261 Pine Street, Durand, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Ron. Do you swear your testimony today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Ron Jasperson. I'm from Auth Consulting out here out of Menominee. I'm the land surveyor and working with Ray Whitkey on this rezone. Yeah, we attempted this before a few years ago. At that time, there was a lot of commercial equipment and supplies on that lot. And since the rezones that were done before to create those general commercial lots, all that stuff has been moved off there now. So it's a vacant lot right now. So it's not an eyesore like it was before. But again, kind of what Ray wants to do is we want to rezone this to R1, and then we're going to do another survey at CSM to combine this lot with the outlot from the town of Tainter. And the intent is for Ray wants to build a house there for one of his siblings or one of his daughters. So. But that's all I have. If you guys have
Okay.
any questions.
Any questions?
That out,
Yeah.
that outlot on number one. Is that like landlocked right now?
Yes, it is. Yes.
It is.
Yep. That lot, that CSM was created many years ago. I think it was just a leftover piece and yeah, they just created it as an outlot.
And so where would this rezone have public access?
Along the, I'll show you here. There's a 6601 easement that goes through here.
Oh, okay.
Created by the CSM. That was done here. Anyway, there was a 6601 easement.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Any other questions? I guess that's, thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Jaspers.
thank you.
If there are no other questions, then we will, or comments, we'll close the public hearing. And then without objection from the committee, would it be okay if we move item 9B, which is action on this request, up to this point in the agenda? I see no objections, so with that, any further discussion about this rezone request? A motion one way or the other?
I'll make a motion that we approve the like rezone request from general ag to R1.
Supervisor Burke moves to approve. Second,
I will second it. Supervisor Kinnear.
Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Rezone is approved. Thank you. So. Okay, let's go up to 6A, Register of Deeds, staff reports, Register of Deeds monthly report.
Morning, everyone. Nothing to add, so if there's any questions.
Any questions, Heather?
This is, I'm showing as Gabriel. This is actually Terry Alt, if you see me.
Okay.
Tom?
Yeah,
I'm a little
right.
slow.
Yeah,
Slow.
that's right.
But I was curious when I looked at it, you had a whole lot more people coming in person. What happened?
Yeah.
You just turned nice and.
Yeah,
and-
we just turned nice and everybody felt really welcome, so they started coming in. I think February is just a shorter month and yeah, less,
Oh, okay.
yeah, nothing substantial was happening, but more people are showing up.
Okay. Without any other questions, we'll move on then. Survey Department, Mr. Carlson.
Good morning. Just a few things in here. So this is a 2-month report because we missed a meeting. But back in February, I presented to UW Stout, the site engineering course. I've been doing that spring and fall. So did that again. There's actually 2 sections of the class now, and they were back to back. So 4-hour block back to back. The class was not very well attended, but having said that, I felt that the one, there was supposed to be 25 students in the class, or I think 5 showed up or 6. Those 5 or 6 though were so engaged. I think students are more apt to speak when there's not a large crowd. So those 5 or 6 students, we had such a good time in 2 hours. I mean, just tons of questions and it was tough to get through the presentation. So I enjoyed it as much as they did. So looking forward to doing that again this fall. So we attended the Red Cedar Conference. Of course, we're working on the land division ordinance. And then I just want to thank the committee for appropriating money in the budget this year. We had a capital expense this year, $12,000. We purchased a new piece of surveying equipment that we've had in our inventory since about 1995. Very good piece of equipment. It's still working fine. It's just not compatible with our newer GPS equipment, and eventually someday it is gonna die on us. So, so anyway, we received that piece of equipment and the guys are out using it this morning. So, that was pretty much it. And then, of course, my budget report, if there's any questions on that.
Any questions?
Tom, what is your opinion on all lands having public access? Either outlot or, I know anything over 20, there's nothing in our ordinance that there has to be public access, right? Or am I mistaken?
Our current land division ordinance is anytime you create a new lot
Okay,
by plat or CSM, it has to have 33 feet of frontage directly on a public road
okay.
or on an access easement that will get you to a public road. So, because in state law, there is no requirement. You can create a landlocked parcel.
Okay.
Nothing in state law says a
But Dunn
parcel,
County is protected that way, then that all parcels created or.
well, subject to our ordinance.
Yeah.
But you could, if you had enough land, Gary, and wanted to sell 20 acres off the back end of one of your 40s to me and not, and it doesn't have frontage and you don't give me an easement, there's nothing illegal about that. Although it's ill-advised to do that.
Right,
And if I'm borrowing money and working with a title company or a lender, they're gonna put a stop to that because they're protecting their interest as well. So a lot of times it's self-policing, but
Yeah.
if I've got, it's a cash sale and I can buy 20 acres from you and not have any legal access other than a handshake or a word of mouth from you, which is only good until
Yeah.
as long as you and I are getting along and we're both alive. But so yeah, it's I mean, there are parcels out there that are technically landlocked. People just have word of mouth agreements to get in, and that it's not a good situation.
because my son and I inherited from my grandfather 160 acres that was landlocked, and it took us like 5-6 years to finally get something permanent, even though the people there let us use it, it wasn't the same. I mean, you always had a, and that should have been done back when it was like created by it, but how hard would it be to have some kind of ordinance, or is that ill-advised that every parcel, every outlot would have public access? But I think in the long run, that's gonna negate a lot of problems in the future. What's your opinion on that?
If you want my honest opinion, I think it's, if you're gonna create a landlocked parcel, shame on you. I don't see that happening a ton right now. I mean, yeah, we've got parcels on the books from years ago that are like that. I mean, if you feel very strongly about that, I'm sure I could certainly talk with Corp Counsel and see if we could somehow incorporate that in the ordinance, but it's a land division ordinance. I don't know. I mean, if I had a 400 1040s in a block and I decided to sell one of them with no access, right now it's exempt from our ordinance. We're not creating a new parcel under 20. But
Do you mean existing lots? Or just new ones?
Well, existing ones, I think would be like grandfather again. But like any new lots, CSM that, and then outlots would have to have some kind of public access, because otherwise you're just gonna push that problem down the road. And sooner or later, but maybe it might be 500 years, but it might be person bought it and not done his like due diligence, and oops, I can't get to it. The only positive about having landlocked, you could tell the assessor, I can't get to it, so it's worth nothing. So I tried that trick too, that didn't go too far, but
Mm.
that just my opinion, I think it'd be a good idea. One person, that's just my opinion, but.
Well, let's put it on our radar and Tom can ponder it a bit and we can talk about it in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Cross? Okay, Mr. Cummings?
Well, like Tom said, there's 2 months worth of stuff here, so I crammed a lot in our Land and Water Conservation Division staff report, so just a couple things to call out. I guess I'll happy to answer any questions, but I've been asked to present at a community conversation for Earth Day. It'll be at the Rossbach Museum on Land and Water Conservation Division. So we're pulling together some information right now to do a presentation on there, and we will also be, I guess a vendor, if you will, at the Youth Expo coming up on the 20th of April at the Menominee High School. So I believe Dunn County is a complementary partner in that in some way. So we've got a booth there. So another way to make an effort this year to try to tell our story a little bit better, what the Land and Water Conservation Division is, what it is that we do, our roles, responsibilities. And I think these are some of those key steps in doing that. That way we're not good or bad, confused with DNR or NRCS or
Yeah,
other
right.
agencies all the time. So, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I did put in there a little bit of information regarding our time allocated last year in 2022 based on our programs is split into percent of one FTE. So if one person was assigned to all that work, that's what the percentage of time would be versus 8 FTE, which is in our office right now. So try to give you an idea of the breadth of work that we're doing and how much time we're actually spending on a few things. So this is always in flux. There's always new programs coming and going, but as we think of new programs, new grants, taking on new work, trying to fit that in with what our current capacity is I guess a reminder and an ask I put in my report of this committee to kind of help us think through that, help us prioritize when needed. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question for Chase on that very point. I mean, what can the committee do when you mention the sanity of staff? And I'm thinking maybe we should try to be of more assistance in this whole process. And I really appreciate that you shared this. Good question.
Very good question. I think there's a level of responsibility that is on us to bring it to you, when we are struggling or need to find a way to prioritize some services. But, there are certain things that we do that we may need to reevaluate should, let's say, a new grant or a new project come forward. So I think of a few things I called out in the report, like the Village of Elk Mound has presented us with a request to help broker some a project with them. That project is important. It's important to reduce phosphorus in the watershed. It's important to maintain relationships with the village and citizens within the county. It's important because it supports the land and water resource management plan that we have for Dunn County. However, we were not planning for that at all this year in 2023. So how do we fit a project like that in? Where do we draw staff time from and try to balance that? So sometimes there's some points that we might bring to you to help and ask questions as to what you feel is a higher priority. And to be, to speak open about it. One program is the Snowmobile Trail Aid Grant Program as an example, where in some perspectives that might not be a conservation related program. However, in many counties, the land and water conservation departments administer those programs. In some counties, they don't. I'm not real intentional about picking on that particular program, but at the same time, it is important to maintaining relationships within the community. We build a lot of rapport with landowners out in the community that are also avid snowmobilers. But when it comes to taking on new activities or programs, we need to rethink about maybe what it is that where we want to be spending our time. So the other one in here is the O'Galley Watershed Project. That's a relatively new one, but I mentioned in the past with federal money coming, it's tough to say no sometimes and pass up opportunities, but at the same time, it can make us a little crazy. And that's where the sanity comment comes in, is how do we balance this? So I guess at this specific point, I don't have a detailed ask of the committee, but just as a reminder that we may be coming to you at times to help us prioritize some work. So,
Well, bring it to us, because at least I, for one, do not want the staff to be insane.
All relative.
Mr. Chairman,
Gary,
Of the two Dunn County farmer-led watersheds, how did they do on their budget request from the state?
So they were both awarded grants. And I actually, Tina Barone is in the audience today. She is administering those programs directly for us for both watersheds. So I can ask her to come up and speak on that if you want to talk specifically on the budget, but you know,
I'm just
they were
kinda
both
curious.
awarded grants. So, yep.
As much as they wanted or just?
I think they were cut. So I think 40,000 is usually the max. And I think the Hay River got, was it 20,000, Tina? They were reduced, and that was reduced across the board typically, unless you were a brand new watershed in the state, some of those may have been funded fully, but in general, there's not enough money to go around for everything, so they're prorating them in a way.
Thank you.
And just on follow up to that is, to those grants don't provide for staff support, right? That's all, that's in kind from us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Chase. All right, that's staff reports then. Let's see what's next. Oh, Ann, sorry. So we go on to proposed amendments to the Chapter 16 Land Division Condominium and Survey Regulations. Oh, okay, yeah, we can move that up if you like to. All right. So we do have a landowner joining us for the, we didn't think we would, but we do for the variance request. So without objection, could we move that up? Okay, so we'll deal with number 8A.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Bear with me here. Okay, so what we have before us this morning is a variance request to create a lot which does not meet the 30,000 square foot contiguous buildable area requirement listed under section 16.46 sub 6 of the Dunn County Land Division Ordinance. So I'll give you some background, but before I do that, I'm going to bring up a sketch here. Everybody see that on the screen? So I'll be referring to this. Okay, so there's an LLC. It's called N2492 County Highway C. That LLC owns a parcel of land located in the town of Dunn. It's currently zoned residential to R2, and it's just happens to be located within the Downsville Sanitary District. There are 2 existing residences that you can see on the screen and several outbuildings located on the subject property. The sewer system, of course, for each residence is connected into that municipal system. Which is a factor into our decision this morning, I believe. Both residences are currently being used as rental units. So the LLC owns them, but they are renting them out. Minimum lot size within R2 zoning served with municipal sewer is 10,000 square feet. So that's an important number to keep in mind, right? And go down to about a quarter of an acre because of the sewer system that they're on. So the applicant is Terry Alt. He is the owner of the LLC, or member of the LLC. He would like to create 2 separate lots, each of which will contain one of the 2 dwellings and one of the 2 larger outbuildings. So I have them sketched up here in yellow. Terry intends to sell lot 1 to the current tenant that's in there right now. So that'd be the larger lot to the north. And then Terry's going to retain ownership of lot 2, the smaller lot to the south. The easterly side of the proposed lot 2 contains some slopes, 20% or greater. There are no mapped wetlands on the property. Due to the relationship of the buildings with the perimeter property lines, lot 2, if we just make a more or less a rectangular lot there, the dividing line between lot 1 and 2, in order to meet the setbacks from zoning to get between the 2 larger buildings there, just kind of split the difference. It ends up at about 6/10 of an acre, about 26,000 square feet. So it certainly does, both lots will comply with the minimum lot size in the zoning ordinance, go down to 10,000 square feet. The creation of the proposed new lot, both of these lots for that matter, requires a new certified survey map that needs to comply with chapter 16 of the county land division ordinance. And in that ordinance, we state that all newly created lots have to have 30,000 square feet minimum of contiguous buildable area. So in this case, lot 2 isn't going to meet that. So when you look at contiguous buildable area, factoring in setbacks, and then there's a buffer from some hydric soils in the area. Lot 2 right now is going to be about 12,700 square feet, falls considerably short. So section 16.083 of the land division ordinance allows for a variance request, which is what the applicant is doing this morning. That's why we're here. The analysis. So the contiguous buildable area standard we put in place to ensure there's adequate area for building use and for the entire on-site water treatment system and its replacement. So as I stated above, there's currently 2 residences there. They're each connected to the municipal sewer system, which is a big thing. Another important point is the 2 residences right now are considered existing non-conforming structures that were placed on one piece of property. That wouldn't be allowed today if they came in, get a zoning permit. So if the requested variance is approved and the proposed lot 2 is allowed to be created, the 2 existing residences would no longer be non-conforming. We'd be cleaning up a zoning issue with it. So we will get into the variance requirements. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the very first one here, strict application of chapter 16 would impose undue hardship because of unique topographic or other conditions of the land involved or other conditions predating adoption of this chapter. So in order to comply with the 30,000 square foot requirement on lot 2, its size would have to be drastically increased. Doing so would result in a very odd shaped lot. It would include some steep slopes and wouldn't be practical for how the property is currently being used. So lot 2 would have to take a big hook, go behind the other outbuilding, and it would create a weird shape or weird flag shaped type lot, just to comply with a 30,000 square foot requirement in our ordinance. And again, zoning allows you to go down to 10,000. So in my mind, it was an oversight when we drafted chapter 16. We should have accounted for, the zoning ordinance with respect to minimum lot size, specifically in this case with municipal sewer system service. So anyhow, if that was in there, we wouldn't be here this morning discussing the variance request, but here we are. I'm not going to go through the other requirements or the purpose statements in our ordinance. They were all in the packet. If there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We have to make sure that the variance request is not contrary to Wisconsin statutes or Wisconsin administrative code, and the granting of this variance would not be contrary to either. So recommendation, based on the analysis and the variance requirements, ENS department recommends approval of the applicant's variance request. The creation of a new lot to separate the existing home and associated outbuilding from the remainder of the property is consistent with the purpose and intent of chapter 16. I'm going to just go through the rest of the packet, make sure I'm not missing anything, but here was just an aerial view from our county GIS website. And then the applicant submitted an application, paid the fee, so that was in the packet, and they also have a narrative or a written brief, which I think I covered most of what was in Mr. Alt's written brief. So that concludes my staff report. Again, we're recommending approval of this for various reasons. Terry Alt is with us by Zoom, so if there's any questions by the committee for him, he can certainly speak to that as well. And I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions on this?
This isn't really about that, but what is the setbacks from like your buildings from the property line? Is there for Dunn County? You must have a setback, don't we?
I need to know what was the zoning of the property?
It's R2.
I mean, I know that I've reviewed this and made
Okay.
sure that we weren't creating a setback issue. Off the top of my head, I don't know the number, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Thank
Mike.
you. Tom, if the new ordinance, the one we're going to be discussing, were in place, would this be brought to us?
No. No, for well, the main reason is we're looking at removing the 30,000 square foot CBA or contiguous buildable area requirement. So staff would still be looking at this and analyzing everything. And as soon as we saw that this is on municipal sewer, it's meeting the zoning minimum lot size, then this particular land division wouldn't require a variance. No.
Okay, and the two residences on one lot, that will still be prohibited with the new subdivision ordinance?
If you're in a zone town,
Okay,
the unzoned towns, no.
I thought the subdivision ordinance applied to all townships.
It does, but in our draft amended ordinance, we are removing, there were two different places in there where we said no, only one habitable no more than one habitable structure could be placed on a newly created parcel. We took that out.
Okay, and we'll just be looking at that soon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can you pull up page 80? So I guess it's just one below. Oh, yeah, okay. What is that that dark maroon line that goes east to west through the property?
That is the division, that's actually a section line. So forget the section numbers here. I think it's section 34 to the north and section 3 to the south. So it's parts of two different congressional townships,
Oh, okay.
if you will. So the land is located in a government lot, which would be to the north. So yeah, the section numbers are on here. So where the hand is here, section 34. So this is government lot 4 in section 34, town 27 north, range 13 west. And this down here is section 3 of town 26 north, range 13 west. So two different townships come together there. That's all that is.
All right, thanks. I was just curious.
Any further questions? We have a motion to approve.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Morehouse moves. There a second? Supervisor Barrier seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we are on to the variance, to the back to 6C review of proposed amendments. Mr. Carlson.
And Tom, you may want to ask if there are public comments. Okay,
I'm sorry, you have to go tell me what you're thinking. I can't read your mind.
okay. Forget it. Sorry.
Is this dealing with the current topic or the previous topic? And
I was just concerned that we didn't do public comment in the beginning of the meeting, but
we did,
we did.
yeah.
Okay,
mhm.
we're good then.
So we have folks here who are interested in this topic, and they've been here last time also, and will continue to be interested. So this is not a public hearing, but without objection from the committee, when appropriate, we may ask for some comments from participation from the audience. Okay.
Okay. So I set this up the same as it was a couple weeks ago. I had a staff report in here referencing line numbers, and then the actual ordinance follows it. So I'll just go through these in order, and then if the committee has any questions. My plan was not to go back to anything we talked about 2 weeks ago. I mean, we certainly can. So everything that's in here this morning is going to be color coded, highlighted, if you will. So I'm just going to start from the top. So meeting with Corp Council, and then I talked with Chase about this after, there seemed to be some discussion at the last meeting about high value ag land, right? We certainly talked about it. And Nick came up with this actually, said, what if we just rearrange the words and call it lands with high agricultural value? It may mean something different to somebody based on the order of the words. Does
Right.
everybody see that? I mean, high value ag land versus lands with high agricultural value. You know, is it ag land that just, it's currently being used for ag purposes, but it's really valuable because it's right next to, say, the city of Menominee. It's prime for houses versus it has high agricultural value. It's growing 200 bushel an acre corn on it. And to me, that means something different. So we threw that in here for discussion this morning. I don't know how the committee feels about that strongly one way or the other, but we have two options staring us here in the face. And I don't know what the committee prefers on that, but we seem to really like the new verbiage, lands with high agricultural value. So.
Any thoughts on that? Questions? Sounds like a go.
Okay, so you're gonna see this again a little bit later. So we'll jump down into line items here, line 98. So staff added this, so just for some context, this is the definition of environmentally sensitive areas. Areas with hydric soil, okay, pink soils. So those areas identified on Wisconsin DNR water surface data viewer as wetland indicators and soils. They're not necessarily mapped wetlands, although if somebody would come out, a lot of times these areas turn into mapped wetlands based on a delineation. But they have soils that are indicative of wet conditions. So we just feel that should be included in the environmentally sensitive area definition. So we're recommending add that. And of course, lands with high agricultural value. So we've got that in here. Line 1-4, I'm gonna go back up, line 117. This wasn't highlighted in your packet. With the quick turnaround between meetings and having to get the packet out, staff were still working on this after it was sent out, made public. But we are working on the high water elevation and specifically what constitutes or what defines 100-year critical 100-year storm event. And we've got some verbiage on that perhaps we can bring back next time. I don't know if we're ready to talk about it this morning, Chase. Would you want to say something, Chase?
Yeah, so basically there'll be an additional sentence that will help define what a critical 100-year critical event would be. So looking at back-to-back 100-year events or the potential where significant snowpack could be impacted by rainwater and then runoff from that as that snow melts. This all comes into play within the ordinance as to how the stormwater ponds and any closed depressions on the proposed development area would need to be designed and calculated in the event of a runoff situation, which then ties back into lowest building opening, the LBO, and making sure that we have proper setbacks and separations between potential high water event from a back-to-back 100-year critical storm and entrance of that surface water into any potential structures. So while it says that in the current definition, there's another sentence that I think would help define what that 100-year critical storm event would be. And I don't have that. I guess I didn't print that in front of me right now, but we'll bring that back next time and can have a longer discussion. But basically it tries to clarify what helps define what that 100-year event is and what should be calculated.
Thank you, Chase. Moving down to line 149. So based on our discussion 2 weeks ago, we decided that outlots really should have some type of an access unless certain conditions are met, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So we're proposing to strike line 149 in its entirety. Line 221. we have other county ordinances that define wetlands, specifically chapter 13 of the general comprehensive zoning ordinance and chapter 14 of the shoreline protection ordinance. So I looked at those ordinances, and I think just to be consistent, we need to add in another sentence here. So we're not really changing anything, but I think we need to add in the green highlighted sentence here. Those areas where water is at, near, or above the land surface long enough to be capable of supporting aquatic or hydrophilic vegetation, and which have soils indicative of wet conditions, including, and then we go into what we had there before, just so there's consistency across ordinances. And this came from, I believe it's chapter 30 of state statute. So I just feel that needs to be added in there. Line 319. So again, here's our header, lands with high agricultural value. Line 484. So just for some context, this is the section of the ordinance that deals with certified survey maps, and specifically the requirements that have to be shown on the face of the map. We just decided that in order to make everybody aware that there's hydric soils or wetlands on your property, when we meet with the applicant, we're going to be reviewing all this, but sometimes that gets lost 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when the land changes hands. And now, and maybe it's just a vacant lot, changes hands 2 or 3 times, and 15 years from now, somebody wants to build on it, and they're not aware that there's hydric soils, wet conditions on the property, not necessarily mapped wetlands, but they dig a basement and they're going to end up with water in it in the spring. So we just thought having this note on the face of the map is going to be there in perpetuity. So 12 years from now, somebody's buying this lot and they read the map, there's a statement on there. So this is new verbiage we're proposing that we feel will better protect the public. The following note shall be placed on the map whenever any part of a proposed lot or an outlot contains wetlands or areas identified as wetland indicators and soils. So this is the note. The parcels shown on this map contain soils which may be seasonally or permanently saturated. These soils may be unsuitable for standard septic systems or other types of on-site wastewater treatment systems, and may impose limitations for different types of development or uses, including but not limited to a high water table, ponding, poor drainage, and shrink swell potential. So we just think that would be a nice addition on the map. And this wouldn't be required on all maps, just maps that meet certain requirements. There's wet conditions. So any questions on that? I'll jump down to line 672.
Tom,
So-
can we go back?
Yeah.
That shrink swell, what does that actually mean?
Frost
Oh,
in the
okay,
spring.
okay.
So if you're in a very wet area and you've got a foundation, let's say, it may end up buckling
Okay,
or
I just
cracking.
wanna- Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. 672. So just for some context, this is the section under preliminary plat requirements. So somebody's doing a major land division, they have to start with a preliminary plat. We're proposing to add in some verbiage here on line 672. If any portion of the subject property contains lands that are identified on the DNR surface water data view or is either mapped wetlands or wetland indicators and soils, the applicant shall have a wetland delineation performed. And the key word there is shall. They have to do it. It's mandatory. They need a wetland delineation performed by a certified wetland delineator unless some said type of delineation has previously been performed. Acceptance of a previous delineation shall be at the discretion of department staff. So what this means is I'm a developer. I'm in the early stages. I'm working on a preliminary plat and I've got some poor soils out here. They may not even be mapped as wetlands, but they meet the definition of hydric soils. They're mapped as such. As part of moving forward, I am required to hire a wetland delineator. It's a cost of doing business. Now we know when that delineation is done where the wetlands are out here, and they can be properly shown. So typically I would think a developer would do that, but there's no requirement to do that. And we
Okay.
just feel as staff that it should be a requirement. You're proposing a lot of, some of these developments are 50, 60 lots, and we need to know where the wetlands are. We need them mapped accurately by somebody that's certified. So we're adding that in here to the ordinance. Any questions on that?
Any questions?
Would that be like required on all land divisions, or I mean, how do you decide like which lands? Should be, then you have to go out there personally and say, yeah, there might be a wetland here or sensitive area.
That's a very good question, and I don't want to say we struggled with this, but we gave this quite a bit of thought. Because right now, where this lives, right, this is under preliminary plats. It's only a land division that triggers a plat. So it could be 4 lots under certain circumstances. Typically, it's much more than that. So we just decided, if you're doing a certified survey map, which is, I would say 90% of the land that gets divided in the county or more each year is done by a certified survey map. Wetlands are mapped on so staff have available to us, you have available, the public has available DNR data from their website. We can see where the mapped wetlands are. We can also see where these wet type soils are mapped, but they're general, right? They're not, somebody didn't go put pin flags, locate them and put them on a map. I don't know a lot about it, but I believe it's based on soils maps and compilation of different things. I know with wetlands, there's 3 components to it. There's the hydrology, the vegetation, and the soil, I believe. Those 3 have to be taken into effect when you're looking at defining a wetland. So staff are looking at this, and most of our land divisions are certified survey maps. Do we want to require all those landowners to have a wetland delineation done? And we just thought at that point, it's not necessary. I mean, in a perfect world, yes, but you have to realize there's cost to all of this and availability of these delineators. The other thing is, the 3 features I just mentioned, vegetation is one of them. You can't, in my mind, how do you determine what is a wetland in February when that one component, your vegetation, is missing? It's not there. You have frozen ground, you have snow. So we'd basically be putting a halt on some of these land divisions during 3-4 months of the year. And we decided, if you go back to that note, okay, if there are mapped wetlands or soils indicative of wet conditions, we just feel a good compromise is to have a note placed on there. They can't come back then perhaps and say, well, the county allowed this lot to be created and now I have water in my basement. Well, there's a note on here. There's hydric soils mapped here, and that was one of the things listed in there, poor drainage. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I hope I am. This would only apply to plats where they would have to have a delineation done.
What I'm curious is, would you have to go out to every site, or would you just look at the soil maps and that kind of stuff in your office without having to physically go out there?
That's correct. We do not visit sites. No, we have all that information available on our computers. Yep. You're welcome. Any other questions on this?
Anybody? No.
Okay. Line 859. So this is just a very minor change, just to be consistent. So we have a chart up here, a table actually, 16.42. It's titled maximum pre-settlement. And we just happened to notice down on line 859, it was caught. To be consistent with the table, it should really say pre-settlement conditions. So just a very minor housekeeping thing. Section 16.43, this is a big one. So before I start, I just want to mention, I reviewed an appellate court case with Corp Counsel. It's actually from 2003. It involved a private developer and Rock County. And in broad terms, the court concluded that a county land division ordinance cannot regulate public improvements. The key word there is public, right? Streets and roads dedicated to the public. We're not talking about access easements or private roads. So county land division ordinance can't regulate public improvements. So based on this ruling, we just felt some modifications were needed to this streets, public and private road and access easement section. And I'll get into that right now. So line 898, this provision should be moved down to item 3 below with some slight modifications. So this is talking about minimum width, 66 foot, which in our mind is fine if we're talking about anything other than a public road. But where this lives right now is under sub 1, which covers all these things. So we're keeping it, but we're moving it to a more appropriate place and making some small modifications to it. Line 913, this should be moved down again. And we'll get to that here shortly with some slight modifications. This was actually one of the items at the heart of the court case, talking about future street extensions for public roads. Line 919, this again needs to be moved down with some slight modifications. So line 940, we feel this is a provision that should be added. So if we look at this line 933, this is the header called public roads. So if we add in minimum street width shall comply with Wisconsin statute 236.16 sub 2. I can bring this up. I have to stop that share. And let me see if this will work. So this is state statute. Not sure how to make this bigger because it's not a PDF. Well, let me just read some of this to you. So again, with respect to public roads, if the width is specified on a master plan or an official map, the streets in the subdivision must be the width specified in the map or plan. If there's no official map or master plan, the streets need to be at least as great as the connecting streets, but no less than 60 feet wide. So statute allows you to go down to 60 feet minimum. Again, these are public roads, unless permitted by a local ordinance. So let's just say, talking with Mr. Christopherson this morning, the town of Elk Mound has a minimum width of 66 feet on public roads, newly created public roads. So that would govern then over the 60 foot. But absent of a town ordinance, with respect to public roads, you could go down to 60 feet according to state statute. So what else here? And then town road widths shall comply with minimum standards prescribed by section 82.50. And they've got that hyperlinked. Let me see if that'll work here. So this is 8250 of state statute, and a lot of this is based on EDT or average daily traffic count. So in theory, you could go down to a 3-rod road if your traffic count is below a certain threshold. So again, in our ordinance referring to state statute, which cross-references 8250 here of statute, we just feel we would be in harmony with that appellate court case, and we just feel we shouldn't be imposing county standards on a town road that, the town is going to be accepting and taking over at some point. That should be their local ordinance governing that, just to keep us out of hot water. So that's why we're proposing to move some of these items down lower and put them in the private road and access easement section, remove them from the public road section. So.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. What does that mean, 3 rods, 4 rods?
Good question. So that was a unit of measurement years ago. 1 rod is 16.5 feet. So a 4-rod road would be 66 feet. 3-rod road would be 49.5. So you're welcome. And I apologize. These terms are commonplace to me, and I don't sometimes forget that the average public or committee members. 4-digit. Oh, that could be. I did not know that. Okay. So anyhow, let me get back to the ordinance. So, again, we're adding this in here, with respect to public roads. Let's just push it out to the state statute and leave that under local control. And the court has said as much. So any questions on that? That's a significant change, but I think it's warranted. So then as we keep moving down, line 946. A portion of this provision should be moved to line 954, and then another portion of it should be struck. And then we're adding in here, this standard shall not apply to plats with private roads. So again, this was the limiter of 4 lots or lots or combination thereof. So if somebody's doing a platted subdivision with a private road that's got 25 lots on, that should be allowed. So adding this in here, we talked about this last time. It was an oversight in our original draft. Line 955. So this was moved, or actually 956. So this is some of the stuff now that we're moving down from up above. So again, we're in the section here that deals with sub 3 private roads and access easements. That court case, again, only dealt with public roads. So we feel, hey, let's put in a 66-foot minimum width here. And then any line 957 needs to be in there as well. So grandfathering in, if you will. So if you're on a private road or access easement that was existing and it's less than 66 feet, and you're combining or reconfiguring lots such that no new parcels are being created, you're exempt from this requirement. We're not increasing the residential density. It's kind of a no-brainer there. 966, I need to go back up. So this is not in your packet, but again, staff, we're working on this since the packet got sent out. We talked about this briefly at the last meeting, and I know the town representatives this is something near and dear to them as well, because they maintain these cul-de-sacs, especially in the winter time. So I passed around a handout this morning to all the committee members, and the town officials have them as well. And I would like to just spend some time on this, because I think it's important. I don't have language in the ordinance, of course, with the quick turnaround, we didn't get it in there in time. So I apologize for that, but I think instead of pushing it out another 2 weeks, we can have a quick conversation on this morning. So line 966 talks about private roads designed as permanent dead ends. Right now, the only option for terminating that, and the word shall is in there, is a cul-de-sac. And hearing some input from the officials that have to maintain these cul-de-sacs, are there some other options? I spoke with our highway commissioner again last week, and he said the DOT standard is for a cul-de-sac. That is the accepted standard. Looking at other communities, other states across the country, and doing some research this morning on the International Fire Code, that's what this document is that you have in front of you. They've got four different options here. And actually, I put it in the packet this morning so I could bring it up on the screen for all to see. I just didn't know how well it would appear on here. So there are 4 options, and of course, everybody's familiar with option number 3, the cul-de-sac. But if we look at option 2, would be 120-foot hammerhead. I know there was some, I believe Diane Morehouse, you had a question, what is a hammerhead? So here's some illustrative examples. The most common type of hammerhead is what you see in example 2 here, but then you could also have like a Y-type hammerhead with a 120-degree angle in there. And then there's also this offset hammerhead. It's like the hammerhead laid on its side, right? And they have some dimensions on here. And again, this came from the International Fire Code. I don't know anything about these standards other than they're published and they're out there. So I wanted to bring this up for some discussion this morning, and in my mind, how I see this perhaps working is back to the ordinance where we talk about private dead end, private roads terminating in a permanent, or I need the ordinance up, but designed as permanent dead ends. I think that's how it's worded. Any private road designed as a permanent dead end. Perhaps we could say shall terminate with a cul-de-sac or any other type of turnaround that is deemed adequate by the local jurisdiction of municipality or something to that effect. I don't have the words exactly in front of me, but I think limiting it to just a cul-de-sac may not be wise if there's a better option for the locals, if they consult with the local fire department, the gentleman that plow the snow in the winter time, there may be other options to consider. And I'm not saying we have to, but by using the word shall and requiring a cul-de-sac, it's very limiting. And there are other options out there. Again, I can't speak to them. I don't drive a fire truck. I haven't consulted with the emergency responders, but I at least wanted to present this morning for some discussion. If you'd like us to come back with some additional language in here, we certainly can. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tom,
Okay,
briefly.
thank you. This is really helpful, Tom. That's exactly what we were hoping for. Committee have any thoughts or questions?
I think it makes sense to allow these other alternatives.
Okay. Anyone from the audience have any thoughts on this? Yeah, could you come up to the? Again, name and address.
Tony Gustavson, E 9920 630th Avenue, Chairman for the town of Elk Mound. I like these options here that Thomas presented. One thing I was thinking about as he was talking today, you're requiring that on a permanent dead end. And would it be advisable to try to have something, even if we have a temporary dead end that's going to be long-term, to put in something like this? Okay. I'm thinking the first one, that could be set up that way. And then your turn off on the, as you're looking at on the left side, could become a future driveway or something like that. Just so that when you send in the fire trucks in there, they got a spot they can turn around. They're not backing out. I was talking to our fire chief before the meeting 2 weeks ago, and he was just in a spot in the village of Elk Mound on a CO2 call. They drove in there. He had to back all the way out to County Trunk H in order to turn around. There was no place for them to turn around in there, right in the village. They probably maybe can add something, but if you got some sort of a turnaround in there, then they got an option. I was in Chase was talking about the village of Elk Mound and there a bunch of new buildings going to the east side, south of 12. And you get back in there and that's the first that's the turnaround they've got. They plan on continually going on, you can see, but that's, anyway, it's constructed right now. The fire truck can turn around on pavement and get back out of there.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else? I think the answer is yes. Come back with some suggestions.
Okay, we can do that. Thank you. So then we'll move on to line 1004. We're just about done. So this was information again that was up above that we pulled down below now under the private road and access easement section. So it has to do with extending roads out to the boundary lines of the tract being subdivided, provide for future street extension. And then item K is something that deals with existing roads that don't meet the requirements. So the 66-foot requirement, they're going to need to come in, meet with the committee and the town to determine what conditions, if any, need to be met. So again, nothing new. We're just relocating it. And then the last one was line 1115. Actually, there's more than that, but line 1115. So this is the section that talks about, this is lot standards. And specifically, acreage, minimum lot size and average width. So we had in here, lots that were in existence, so basically grandfathered in lots. If they're gonna be combined with another lot, adjacent lot, or reconfigured, they shall be exempt from these requirements. We had all the scenarios in here, they'd be exempt if they're, so A is town zoning, B is county zoning, C is shoreland, and then D is all those other areas that this ordinance would apply to. And after talking with Corp Counsel and Ann, we decided that A, B, and C that were originally in here should really be struck. We shouldn't be going in and saying, hey, if you're in a zone town and you're just reconfiguring these lots and the minimum lot size under, say, general ag is 1 acre, we shouldn't be trumping that with the land division ordinance. It would be better if the zoning ordinance was amended to allow for that. So just some housekeeping here. Does everybody see that? We have other ordinances in place and they should really be amended instead of using this as a vehicle to do that. So we're gonna remove we're recommending remove A, B, and C and still leave D in there. Line 1145. I apologize, this wasn't in the narrative in the packet that went out. I just forgot about it. But we're covering it right now. So, and this stems from 2 weeks ago, our conversation with outlots. So we're adding in the word and outlots to line 1145. So now that reads all lots and outlots shall have a minimum of 33 feet of frontage directly on a public or private road or access easement. I think that will certainly satisfy the concerns that were raised last time. However, we do have those unique situations. I would say let me start over. In my mind, they're not really unique. I would say that's more the norm, where we're creating outlots that are going to an adjoining landowner. So this is the verbiage that was vetted, I guess, to the committee 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't actually in the draft document. Now it's in there, and I'll just read it. So again, all lots and outlots have to have 33 feet of frontage. Any proposed outlot that is intended to be conveyed to an adjoining landowner shall be exempt from this provision and will require the following note to be placed on the face of the certified survey map or plat. Outlot and certain number is intended to be conveyed, excuse me, to an adjoining landowner. Any future independent conveyance of said outlot to a non-adjoining landowner shall include an access easement as part of the conveyance. Everybody understand that and comfortable with that? I know staff certainly are. Okay.
Okay.
That concludes the work that staff and Corp Counsel have done since our last meeting. So are there any questions by the committee, something we didn't cover that you think needs to, or something you want to circle back around to from 2 weeks ago? I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Tom, as you look at all the changes, which are great, it seems, I have a question for you. Do you see anything in this that is a really big comprehensive change from the past? Something that would really affect towns or residents?
Well, I guess the big things that stand out for me are the removal of the CBA, contiguous buildable area requirement. That's gonna drastically improve our work function here and workflow at the county and serve the public, I think, much better. You touched on this a little earlier, Mr. Kinnear, but the 2 residences on a parcel, so we're removing that. So if you're in an unzoned town and you wanted to do a mobile home park, you could, in theory. It's unzoned, as long as there isn't shoreland zoning overlay there. So that, I guess that's probably the biggest thing I think that would affect the towns, would be not having us impose, I guess, what some would argue is zoning on the unzoned towns. So again, you could have multiple residences on a newly created lot. If the town ordinance would allow for that. So if there is one.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything again. But I have another question. It seems like this is more a little environmentally wetland friendly than the old one or the first draft we saw. You put a couple of things in here about wetlands and hydric soils and so forth. I kind of like that, or am I misconstruing?
When you say environmentally wetland friendly, do you mean benefiting the divider, or we're placing more safeguards?
Safeguards.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're really placing more safeguards. It's just how we're managing them. I don't know. I guess you could argue though. I mean, we're requiring a wetland delineation and a note on the face of the map. I guess we feel that these areas certainly are environmentally sensitive, but how far do we take that and restricting building from them? And I guess if we want to take it up a notch, then the zoning ordinance should really be looked at as far as setting up buffers from these, if we want to afford more protection, I guess, as far as development, restricting development within a certain buffer from these wetland areas, then that would be the place to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to create more work for the committee or for Ann for that matter, but yeah, I think it's, I really like the amended ordinance that we have. I think it's going to serve the public a little bit better and make it a more efficient review for the staff that are involved here at the county, and for respect for the committee's time too, is, variance requests coming before the committee, that we can handle those issues in our office.
Yeah, I wasn't advocating for doing more. I just thought recognizing the things, delineating the things, putting them on the map brings it more to the forefront as far as not just you recognizing it or the committee recognizing it, but people doing the work recognize it. So I like that.
Thank you. So I guess our plan would be to come back in 2 weeks with this buttoned up. If we get a thumbs up from the committee at that point, then we'll schedule a public hearing.
Okay. Are there any other comments anyone has?
I think I have a gap in my understanding. So going back to 1145. About requiring access easements for all lots and outlots. That makes sense to me. I wanted to go back to the question that Gary raised earlier. It seemed like it was on a similar issue, but I'm guessing that they must be different somehow. I take it that this doesn't resolve the concern that you brought up earlier, or does it?
Yeah, I think it did. Not.
Well,
What am I missing?
the part you're missing, Gary, with all due respect, is you were talking about all parcels regardless of size in the county. So if I'm gonna sell 120 acres to somebody that's landlocked, that doesn't fall under the purview of this land division ordinance, because this ordinance that we've been working on, that we have on the books right now, only applies to newly created parcels under 20 acres. So we would have to have something in here that would apply countywide to all transfers.
And you were going to look into that, correct?
We can look into it. The wheels are turning already for the last half hour since you brought that up. And one thing I can see with that is enforcement. Somebody's gonna record a transfer, a deed for 40 acres that's landlocked. And who's gonna, I mean, I don't actually come in every morning at 6 o'clock and do a search to see what land transferred yesterday and looking for, I don't actively search out violations. So that would have to be brought to my attention from the Register of Deeds office, the real property lister's office. And then at that point, it might be, let's just say we find out, it's brought to my attention a month after it happens. What am I gonna do about it? I mean, there's a rhetorical question, but what is the county gonna do about it after that? So Chase just bought a landlot 40 from you. I find out a month later. So I'm gonna call him up and say, well, you gotta give that land back now to Gary. Well, he's not gonna do that. And how does he fix it after the fact? And as far as, enforcement and of the violation, and what are the ramifications of that? Whereas if it's a land division that's coming before Ann and I, and we're reviewing it for the ordinance requirements, we can see that, hey, this 18-acre parcel you're trying to create is landlocked. You have to do something about it. We're actively working on that because they're paying us to review it. But anything that's exempt from the ordinance, we're not seeing it. And we probably wouldn't be notified about it until way after the fact. And I can see that being problematic. How do we deal with it after the fact? How do you tell Chase that he's got to deed the land back to you? Until he gets this fixed, or he approaches the neighbors and he can't secure an easement because none of the neighbors are willing to give him an easement. Not our problem. So we just have to think about, there's just something I thought about in the last half hour
Just
here.
keep on like you're thinking about it, but if it's a problem under 20 acres not having access, it'd also be a problem of over 20 acres would be a problem also. So I mean, just kind of keep your
No, I
thoughts going on it.
I certainly agree with you. You make some good points on that, but from the practical side of things, how would we implement that? I'm just thinking out loud, our ordinance would have to say all land division or land transfers independent of size shall not create well, you're not creating a new parcel. I mean, if the 40 is already there, you're not creating it. So it just have to say all transfers of property, regardless of size, shall have some type of an access provided for. But then again, how, the enforcement of that, I think, would be the most difficult piece. Because in my mind, if you're going to have an ordinance set up with a requirement, then you should really figure out how is that going to be enforced? And I think that's the part that we'd be stumbling on personally, but I haven't given it much thought. Just in the short time we've talked about it this morning. But I can certainly mention it to Nick and see if he has any thoughts on it as well.
Just to follow up, so you mentioned there's a distinction between less than 20 acres and greater than 20 acres. Can you just explain that one more time?
Yep, so the land division ordinance, what triggers that is anytime you're creating a new parcel in Dunn County in an unincorporated area. So if you're in the city of Menominee or any of the incorporated villages, this ordinance doesn't apply. So any unincorporated area of the county, you're creating a new parcel under 20 acres, you have to comply with this ordinance. And this says a certified survey map is needed, all these different requirements. So if I'm creating a 24-acre parcel, I can do that with a simple legal description. I still may need to have a survey done to generate bearings and distances around the parcel, but I can put that legal description on a warranty deed and record it at the Register of Deeds and transfer title. I'm not required to have, like right now, under the current ordinance, if somebody is concerned about meeting the contiguous buildable area requirement, well, they can just I always tell them, your other option is create a large enough parcel that you're not bound by this ordinance. And sometimes they do that, sometimes they can't. For whatever reasons, they don't have enough land. But if somebody's creating a 20.5 acre parcel, 21 acres, 35-acre parcel, whatever, the fact that it's over 20 acres, they're exempt from our land division ordinance. And we also allow them to convey an equal half of a government protracted quarter section, which is a nominal 40-acre parcel. So you can convey north half, south half, east half, west half. Key word there is half, an equal half.
Okay.
And we fully recognize that some of these 40s in the tax roll don't measure 40, or for that matter, they get them surveyed and they're 39.95. Everybody thinks, well, I have 40 acres. Well, you might have more or less than 40. I don't know that there's a 40 in Dunn County, a quarter that measures 40.00. So we give you the benefit of the doubt. If you've got 39.5 acres and you want to convey the north half of that, that's fine. The fact that you're conveying half of it, we're allowing that. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good discussion. Then we'll come back to that thanks a lot, Tom. Let's see, where are we here? 9A, budget adjustment request, Chase.
Yeah, if it's okay with you, Chairman Quinn, I'll ask Tina Barone to come up and
Sure.
she can speak on this grant project a little bit. Basically what this is, in your packet are two documents. One is a resolution for a budget adjustment for 2020-23 budget, and then the supporting information with it. With that, I'll let Tina kind of talk a little bit about what the project is and how it's related to her work and our work in land and water conservation. So it's on already. Yep.
Good. I'm Tina Barone. I'm a conservation planner and I work with the two farmer-led watershed groups that we have in Dunn County. And this project is associated with the Red Cedar Conservation Farmer-led group. That's the one over by Colfax and Grant Township and the surrounding areas. We did apply for a farmer-led watershed grant through DADCAP earlier this year, and that was, we requested 40,000 and we only got 24,400 for it. And some of the comments that they had on there were that we didn't have enough demonstration of demonstration research efforts compared to some of the exceptional applicants for that. So the farmer-led really wanted to focus on doing more research. And then this pilot grant application came out. And so basically DADCAP was offering people to apply for trial and research for looking at commercial nitrogen use and how we can use that in a way where we're still getting the production out of our crops, but looking at maybe reducing the use of nitrogen or using it more responsibly so that, you know, it doesn't affect our water quality. So we proposed two different trials as part of the whole project. And one is looking at early termination of cover crops versus late termination of cover crops and how that affects the nitrogen that's available to plants. And then also we're looking at tillage with the use of manure. So when we till that in, are we getting more bang for our buck out of it? Basically, are we utilizing more of the nutrients? This is a 2-year grant, 2 years of research on 4 different producers from the farmer-led watersheds. And it involves a bunch of different soil sampling, weather stations, tissue testing of the plants. So it's pretty in-depth, more in-depth than some of the other research we've done, I think, in the past with this group.
Any questions?
And if I might just add too, so this is a pilot project that was created through the legislature as a response to some of the 2019 Water Quality Task Force efforts. So in a way, this is tying some of that back into some of those nitrogen concerns. So the request here is the application was put in. We've received verbal commitment that we were awarded the grant. However, it's not contract hasn't been signed or anything yet. They're still going through some legal review because it is a pilot program. But in the interest of time and making sure that we can stick with the growing season schedule, we felt it was in our best interest to get this before you and to county board with the full anticipation that this would be contracted through the state. So again, this is money in, money out. There is no impact on the levy. And that's basically what the information in the packet. So this will has been scheduled for the executive committee and full county board for April.
Okay. Do we need to approve this, Chase, or is it?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so motion to approve the
Tina.
request.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move approval of this request for budget adjustment.
Is there a second? Supervisor Bjork seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, carries. I think that's all of the action and discussion items. Any announcements? So we have a meeting scheduled for May 8th, and Mr. Carlson has noticed that there's a conflict with staff on that day.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get this out plenty ahead of time and ask the committee to please consider this. So our human resources department they're funding some training for all supervisory staff, and it's Monday, May 8th. The subject matter is performance management and building a positive workplace culture. So all four managers that report to this committee, Heather, myself, Ann, and Chase have been invited to attend that training. It starts at 9:30 in the morning and goes till 4 or 4:30. So it's an all-day training. We do have a PRD meeting scheduled for that day. It'd be a Monday. So it's a ways out, Monday, May 8th, but we're just wondering, would the committee be receptive? I cleared it with HR. We still can attend the training even if we show up late. But obviously, if we can be there for all of it, it would be beneficial to us, I think. So I don't know if the committee would be receptive to rescheduling our meeting to a different time that week. I'm thinking there's going to be some business, we're certainly going to need a
Sure.
meeting. So I just wanted to get that out for your
Yeah.
consideration. We have enough time ahead to plan for it. And not that we may need to make a decision today unless
Well,
we
if
can, but
Monica can quickly look through her schedule, maybe we can.
My classes are over by then, and so I think I could probably, yeah, I should be able to.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Well, then let's do that. Let's schedule for Tuesday on the 9th.
Tuesday,
And,
May 9th at the regular time.
Okay, anything else? All right, then we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for